Do you suffer from painful, heavy periods, PMS, mood swings, or migraines? Are you tired of being told they are just normal parts of life? Or are you afraid your child's going to suffer these symptoms too? At Vividis, the full of life company, we take the pain, misery, and confusion out of those menstrual cycles and replace them with tools of empowerment and time management so you can be Vividis. Visit embracingflowpodcast.com for more information on transforming your cycles from ow to wow.
Ever felt frustrated being told PMS, heavy bleeding, and cramping are just normal parts of life? You're not alone. I loathed my monthly cycle for decades. That all changed when I earned 3 health coaching certifications discovering something incredible. Your period is vital. It is an outward sign of your inner health, and it holds the key to unlocking your full potential. I've been there battling heavy, painful periods, and I turn them into cycles with minimal PMS and cramping. Today, I'm on a mission to share that information with you. Pour a cup of your favorite drink, get comfy, and grab your headphones as we embark on a candid and empowering journey of self-discovery. Together, we'll demystify menstrual cycles, explore cyclical living, delve into natural birth control, and guide parents through those crucial period talks with tweens and teens. It's time to break the taboo around menstruation and embrace the wisdom it holds. I'm your host, Heather Almendinger, and this is the Embracing Flow podcast.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Embracing Flow. Our guest today is an expert at embracing flow. I'd like to introduce the uncensored coach, Ingrid. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Before we get too far and in depth, because I know this conversation is going to go in so many different directions, I'm going to introduce you to Miss Coach Ingrid. She is a dynamic and inspirational coach, author, speaker, and health commentator who helps women with metabolic and systemic inflammatory conditions, especially type 2 diabetes, reversing disease, and working towards living a life free of medications and debilitating symptoms. Ingrid's coaching, trainings, and group programs focus on an integrative and holistic approach to healing through nutrition and lifestyle. That is absolutely amazing, Ingrid. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Like I said, this is going to be a fun episode. How did you become Coach Ingrid and get involved in all of this stuff that you're doing?
I'm so glad you asked that question, Heather, because it was not my intention to ever be a health coach. In fact, I was so ill 10 years ago, I did not even think that I would be able to take care of myself in the long run, let alone my children, who were 5 and 7 at the time. Certainly didn't think I would ever have the capacity to go back to work in any way, shape, or form, let alone become an entrepreneur and have my own business, helping other women reverse and preferably prevent what I went through. So 10 years ago, I was given a terminal diagnosis. Doctors gave me 3 years to live, maybe 50% reduction of my of my symptoms. I did have a rare type of autoimmune disease. And really, in the years that followed, I came to understand that all of these modern diseases of civilization, these metabolic diseases, systemic inflammatory, they're all basically metabolic dysfunction. Some are not as bad as others. My doctors described me as being metabolically bankrupt. I mean, I almost died. And I didn't. And 10 years later, here I am. I am free of all disease. There is not a trace of disease in me. On paper, I am metabolically very healthy and stable. And it's because of those changes that I made to mindset, to nutrition, to lifestyle, to really understanding that the body works. We got to work on the body holistically. I had so many doctors. I had my gastroenterologist, I had my rheumatologist, I had my cardiologist, I had my ENT, I had my gynecologist, I used to make jokes, Heather. I used to make jokes about, my correct doctors. Oh, look, I've got a new doctor now, a new specialist. Or my liver doctor, she was my favorite one. She said, well, Ingrid, you need to lose 5% of your body weight. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? And she just looked at me and she got up and she walked out the door.
Oh, wow.
And then the
That's
nurse came back in and I'm like, is she coming back? No, you're done. And I'm like, okay, well, that was
uh,
super not helpful. So
yeah.
I got into the health coaching business once I decided, you know what, while the Western medicine, all the high tech stuff and all the fancy, horribly expensive pharmaceuticals, they saved my life. There's no question. Heather, I would not be standing here. I would be dead. They saved me. They got me to that next point. I believed the narrative that you have to take these drugs forever or the disease will come back and you will die. I believed that. So I towed the line until I realized that, you know what, the treatments are actually the side effects, while they're not the same as active disease. And when you have inflammatory bowel disease, anyone out there, and my fellow IBD warriors, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, not a sexy disease, let me tell you. Um, I realized that, you know what? The drugs are doing their part, but now I'm at the point where the side effects are horrible and the symptoms are coming back a little bit. So what do they want to do? They want to up the drugs. And I'm like, how about thank you, no, thank you, thank you. There's got to be another way. I've got nothing to lose. And so that's when it occurred to me, I'm like, perhaps food might have something to do with it because I have an autoimmune disease that's based in the gut. My immune system is attacking healthy tissue and from my basically from my esophagus right down to the end of my butt. And, and I had all the other symptoms of inflammation. And while the drugs made the actual disease go into clinical remission, I had all the other symptoms of inflammation. My A1C was horrible. My triglycerides were crap. I mean, it was just, I was a hot mess. Everything, I was still metabolically bankrupt. So I decided I'm going to try something different. Well, within 3 days of changing my food, I felt 8% better. I couldn't even believe it. I just decided to rip that bandage off and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go cold turkey off the sugar and all the processed stuff. And it was hard at the beginning, but I just felt so much better. And maybe it's partly because, well, my body needed to get off all the crap that I was eating and all the horrible, self-sabotage and all the things that we do
Oh,
to
yeah.
ourselves
Oh,
that
yeah. We
tell
do a
us that
lot of
we're no good.
self-sabotage.
But it was then I'm like, I think it was the mindset. You know what? This is no longer acceptable. I'm going to try something different. And look what happened. And as I started to heal and as I started to get my life back, and the old Ingrid, who was just buried under this, mountain of disease and depression and anxiety and just swollen everything and just misery and pain. As I started to emerge, people were like, Ingrid, you look amazing. Like, what have you done? Have you lost weight? I mean, because I went from being like 110 pounds and my bones sticking out because I was so malnourished because I couldn't keep water down even. That was horrible. To then all of a sudden I ballooned. I ballooned again. I gained all this weight and more. I was like the Michelin man. And I felt uncomfortable. Well, it's not just a vanity thing. I felt uncomfortable in
Yep.
my own skin. I felt inflamed. It was just like, I feel like a busted can of biscuits. It was not good. And it was just misery. But as I came out of it and as I started to clean up all areas of my life, people were coming to me like, Ingrid, what are you doing? Are you on some special diet? And I hate that thing. No, I'm not on a diet. I've
Yep.
changed the way I eat. This is my life now. It's not just some fad diet or whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am. They're like, well, what are you doing? Can you share with us? And I'm like, well, sure. And then I had people say, well, can you start a Facebook group? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? I was at my acupuncturist because I had been seeing my acupuncturist for a long time. Um, and I was telling him, yeah, Adam, it's like all these people are asking me for advice. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, oh my God, Ingrid. He's like, don't you understand? This is your calling. You need to go back to school. You need to get whatever credentials you need to do. And you need to hang your shingle up and you need to start teaching people what you know to work.
Yeah.
He's like, people are coming to you for a reason. And finally it was like, oh, yeah, because especially being given a terminal diagnosis, it's like, well, why me? Why me? Why did this terrible thing happen to me? Well, I've since realized that I brought it upon myself. And that's the reality is that the majority of our diseases of, modern civilization and lifestyle are, yeah, we brought them on ourselves. We did this to ourselves. because we believe the lies and we feel like crap about ourselves. Anyway, yeah. I realized I did this to myself. I understood how I got there. And for me, it was this epiphany. Oh, maybe this is why I was given this lesson. This is why the universe, whatever higher power you subscribe to, I'm like, maybe the universe is telling me this is now my purpose in life, that I had to go through that hard lesson and come out of it the other end. Because then it kind of feels like, oh, well, it was kind of worth it. It sounds really weird that it's like, oh, you know what? I'm actually glad that happened to me because I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yep. I agree with you. I had horrible, painful, nauseating periods.
Oof.
I used that plus all the other experiences that I
Mhm.
had with my menstrual cycle. And what am I now? I went from hating my cycle to
Mhm.
actually enjoying it.
Right.
And I teach others how to do that. And I can't, I can't tell you how many people have come back and said, Heather,
Yeah.
I never realized
Mhm.
how our cycles
Mhm.
impact how many different functions in our life. You
Yes.
mentioned metabolic disease a few
Mhm.
times
Mhm.
and metabolic health.
Mhm.
Can you explain or describe metabolic what that is? What is
What
metabolic
is
health
metabolic
and
health?
what are metabolic diseases? Because I know that could be a term that we hear. I know I hear it a lot.
All the time. It's being bandied
Just
about. Mhm.
but without actually understanding what it means. So that way our listeners can go, that's something I
Mm.
may have and just never
Yeah.
realized it.
Yeah. So when we talk about metabolism, and I studied this extensively when I went to Ayurveda school. I love Ayurveda. It's a beautiful, beautiful science. So your metabolism is basically how um, your body takes in fuel, food, how the digestive process is effective in breaking down that food and fuel for it then to be dispelled around the body for all of your cells and all of your organs to function properly as they should. So when we talk about, oh, I have a slow metabolism or I have a sluggish metabolism, what that means is that quite likely it's often to do with the type of food that you're eating is very difficult to digest. Your gut is probably messed up in terms of it's got overgrowth of too many of the bad bacteria as opposed to the good bacteria. You could have leaky gut syndrome, which is when you have certain proteins like the proteins in gluten and also pesticides and herbicides like glyphosate are going to put tiny little adhesions and lesions, like tiny little microscopic ones in the lining of your gut, so toxins spill out. So basically, your metabolism is dysfunctional when your digestive process is inhibited by toxins, and it's slow and we can't digest. And the biggest cause of metabolic dysfunction is sugar. It's sugar. That is, especially when we talk in relation to hormones and with insulin being your master hormone. It is the master hormone. It is at the top of the food chain, so to speak.
Mhm.
When
Yes, it
your
is.
insulin is out of control and it's like a roller coaster, when you're eating too much sugar, when you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, when you live a sedentary lifestyle, when you have other environmental toxins, these are all going to affect your metabolism in terms of how you are able to digest and process fuel and have it distributed out throughout the body to make everything work properly. Does that make sense?
It does. What are some, besides feeling
Mhm.
sluggish,
Yeah.
what are some of the other symptoms that somebody may
Right.
have metabolic issue? Maybe not the metabolic
Mhm.
disease. They
Right.
may not have the
Mhm.
higher A1C, but they're insulin resistant. What
Right.
are some outward signs that our body shows that they can
Right.
kind of look and say, I might want to go see a doctor?
Yeah. And there's only 12% of the adult population in the United States. And I think it's pretty much the same in other parts of the developed world as well. Some it may be even worse in some because we're not the number one worst metabolically dysfunctional population, but only about 12% are metabolically healthy. The rest of them have some level of metabolic disease. And we're talking diabetes, pre-diabetes. If you're pre-diabetic, then if your doctor has said you're pre-diabetic, you have insulin resistance. which is another whole thing we can get into later if you want. You can Google it, insulin resistance. It's another term that's been bandied about. It basically means
Mhm.
that you have too much sugar and you're producing too much insulin. So there's things like that are really obvious that I can see. Obesity is one of them. And I'm not here to fat shame anyone. I don't care what your pant size is. And having body fat is not necessarily a sign that you're metabolically unhealthy, because the scale is not your friend. But I can see obesity and morbid obesity, you're going to be in trouble. It's that belly fat that you have around the middle, particularly for those of us who are, late 40s, early 50s, even early 40s. It depends on how soon perimenopause kicks in. That stubborn belly fat that you cannot lose. It's the skin tags. Skin tags, I'm walking around the grocery store and I'm looking at all the people who, it's just a curiosity, who are, obese, morbidly obese, and I see what's in their carts. They've got the sodas and the cookies and the breakfast cereals, and they've got the frozen pizzas and all of the thing. And I'm like, where's your green food? Like, why don't you go to the produce section and get a bag of apples or something? I'm like, oh dear God. And I can see them. Not only are they morbidly obese, but I can see the skin tags. I can see the skin tags on their neck, in the folds of their skin. Some of them are so bad I see them on their arms. And those skin tags are a sign. They're a sign that you need to go to your doctor and you need to get some labs done. So these are things, symptoms like, for me, it was the frozen shoulder. The frozen shoulder was really bad. The joint pain. My joint pain, all my shoulders, my fingers, my elbows would hurt, my knees. I would have trouble getting up off the couch. Everything would hurt. It was the migraines. It was the allergies. It was the dry eyes. It was the bleeding gums. It was my hair falling out. It was my swollen feet and ankles. I had cankles on my cankles. It was the thirst. If you're thirsty all the time, go see your doctor, because excessive thirst is in fact a sign that you could have pre-diabetes or full-blown diabetes. So there's a lot of things that are kind of that show up that you
Mhm.
can say, well, perhaps I am metabolically dysfunction. And then, it affects all your other hormones too. And, I know, even my daughter, she's 18. She's like, Mom, last week was really rough, because she's like, oh, I got my period. Do you think that's why I just had a really rough week? And I just like was so angry. And I mean, I could hear her throwing things, and I'm like, well, this brings back some memories. I was a door slammer. I would be PMSing and I'm like, "Ah," slam. My dad had to
Yeah.
constantly screw all the doorknobs back on the doors, because I was a door slammer and a phone slammer. You can't slam your phones anymore. But yeah, she's like, "Mom, was that because I, got my period?" And I'm like, I was really like angry and upset and frustrated, and she had some meltdowns. She's like, and then I got my period. Do you think that has something to do with it? And I'm like, yep, Captain
Yeah.
Obvious, yes. And she said, but I noticed that last month, where it wasn't so bad, because I ate a lot of beef and I had some broccoli and I drank a lot of water, and I didn't get McDonald's once, and I didn't eat my gummy bears and my all the rubbish, the monster drinks and all of those things. She was realized that of her own accord that when she ate single ingredient foods that were whole foods and not ultra processed foods, she did in fact notice the difference. And she came to that conclusion by herself, but because she knows what I do for a living and she's been through me, she was really little when I was diagnosed with, with this awful metabolic disease. She's kind of, she gets it. She knows that I'm a reliable source. Yeah, you can ask
Mhm.
your mum. And she's come to that conclusion herself. And even though looking back on my own teenage years, I didn't eat badly. We ate very healthy. We had family dinners every night. Everything was cooked from scratch. There was no takeout. We said no soda in the house or anything like that. We actually ate pretty healthy. There were some things. There were probably some environmental things and some other things, like I don't know about you, but I grew up in the margarine age.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. I grew up in margarine
Well,
age. Oh, yeah.
margarine age, we always had our, canola oil and vegetables. And you think, well, how much of a difference can that make? Well, it can. And then I think back to, my late teens. I was probably in high school, I think junior, senior year. I went on birth control pills because my periods were horrible and my PMS was terrible. And I think my family was sick of my tantrums. It was just, it was my whole, I'm like, so I did what a lot of girls still do. Let's go on birth control.
Mhm.
And that made my periods regular. My moods were better. I did start getting some bad migraines, and I think that was due to stress. I mean, I have to be honest, Heather, those teenage years were really stressful for me. They were very stressful for me. They were stressful. It is a stressful time. They were
Yep.
stressful for my daughter as well. It's yeah, I mean, I used to say, "Give me a teenager over a toddler any day," and I'm like, "I take that back now."
Yes. Well, it's I mean, you think of the stress that we're going through as teens,
Yes.
it's kind of in a way going back to our toddler years before we could
Mhm.
talk and
Yep.
developing those emotions and realizing
Mhm.
we have those emotions.
Mhm.
As teenagers, we s- we have different things coming at us.
Yep.
We have the stress of, okay, I'm becoming an adult. Where am I going to go to school? Am I going to go to a higher education?
Right.
Which school? I have
Which
tests
school?
I
Yep.
have to take. I have to keep my grades up. What classes are going to get me into the schools that I want? Does
Oh,
does Billy Bob still like me?
right.
Does Susie Q, she looked at me funny in the hallway today.
Mhm.
Is she
Mhm.
still my friend?
Yep.
And then Miss Jackie back here, she's been a thorn in my side since grade
Mhm.
school. She keeps giving me the stink eye. I mean, you've got all of this stuff going on.
That's really if that stress, that fear has just it's exacerbated all these symptoms that our kids are getting with mental health, with hormonal health, all of the things. And I kind of really feel strongly that, we have a certain expectation of where our teenagers are supposed to be when they turn 18.
Mhm.
Yes, they have to get good grades. They have to do all the AP classes. They have to score high on their SATs. And then they have to work, work, work to put in all the college applications and work, work, work to get all the
Yes.
scholarships and all the BS. I mean, we didn't have that in my day. I had one choice. I go to my local college, my local university, live at home, and that's what I do. I wasn't given all these choices. It wasn't all like, this is what you're going to do. It was actually much simpler time. And I think those expectations are really unrealistic. And I see some of these girls, they have the bad acne, they have the headaches, they have the heavy bleeding, all the irregular cycles because of the stress is number one. I know that
Mhm.
stress caused my disease. 100%. That was
Yep.
number one on the list. Stress. It is the most common cause of all of these metabolic diseases, of all these hormone irregularities, is stress. Because what happens when you're stressed, you shoot out cortisol, which is the main stress hormone,
Yep.
which is the fat storing hormone. And when you're constantly spewing out, and that's going to trigger your blood sugar and your insulin and all of the rest of it, of course, we're walking around like little metabolic time bombs
Yep.
because everything is disrupted. Everything is disrupted. And it's no wonder that our girls are having such a horrendous time with puberty.
Yeah.
With
I mean,
puberty, because they have the stress and then they eat the crap, and then there's cyberbullying. You know what I mean?
yeah. You add that. I mean, you mentioned cortisol, you
Yes.
mentioned insulin.
Mhm.
And the thing is with cortisol, it stores that fat.
Mhm.
Adipose fat loves to hold on to
Yes.
estrogen. So then you have estrogen
Yes.
dominance. Estrogen dominance
Ugh.
causes longer periods, heavier
Yes.
periods,
Heavy periods.
painful periods. It just leads to, and we can build up estrogen in our body if it's
Mhm.
released with our waste,
Right.
with our fecal waste. But if we
Mhm.
don't have enough fiber in our diets, it's building up in our gut, it's building up in
Right.
our body, it's causing so many other different
Mhm.
issues.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
not just fiber, it's the fat
no.
as well. It's fear-mongering fat. No, you need fat. You need the right types of fat because when you're constipated, it means you're dehydrated as well as not having enough fiber. You can eat all the fiber in the world, but if you're not hydrated, it's going to be a tiny little rock. And if you don't have enough healthy fats, your colon isn't going to be lubricated enough to
No.
expel it. I mean, we're talking about poop here. I talk about poop all
And
day, every day. I love talking about poop because it's really important. No,
and
it
it
is. You
is.
got to
It
get the
is. It's
toxins.
very I call it bunny poop, that hard,
Okay.
little,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
call it bunny poop.
Rabbit droppings.
Yes, because it's hard, and I know I'm dehydrated. I know I didn't
Yep.
get the right fats.
Right.
And that's the thing. There are right fats and
Oh
there
yeah.
are incorrect
Yep.
fats. And when you were mentioning the margarine, that's
Oh
one
yeah.
of the
Ugh.
incorrect fat, those
It's
seed oils.
awful. It's so inflammatory. It's garbage.
Exactly. So
But
what are
it's
some of the
cheap.
I
It's
know.
cheap.
What are some of the good fats? I know the good fats. I can share the good
Uh-huh.
fats, but I'm not here to teach the good fats. That's what I'm brought
Well,
you
I
on
mean,
for.
I'd love to compare notes with you, Heather, because it does and especially when you're like PMSing or like for me, I'm like having the hot flashes and and I'm just really pissed off and I'm craving something and it's like either the fatty oily things like the potato chips or you
Mhm.
want that salty crunchy fattiness. That's not good because they're usually fried in canola oil or some kind of vegetable oil, and they're probably not organic. Well, you can get a lot more organic, potato chips and stuff like that now. But if you buy the regular industrial farm ones, you're just like, yeah, you're eating garbage and chemicals. So I love ghee, and this came about from my Ayurveda training. Ghee is such a wonderful, it's a wonderful fat. I love animal fats; they're my favorites. And again, saturated fats, that's not the problem. It's the
No.
seed oils. It's the
Yes.
sugar. The sugar is what's going to give you a heart attack, not the bacon fat and the ghee. I love ghee and I recommend that to a lot of my clients because it is actually has a lot of healing properties for the gut. And that's where your problems are going to stem from. It's also really good for those people who are lactose intolerant. And there's reasons why they're lactose intolerant. But because ghee, I've actually made it myself. I'm never going to do it again. I can just buy it in the store. But it's basically, it's clarified butter. So you get your butter, you put it in a saucepan and you boil it until all the lactose, which is the milk sugars, is all sort of burnt off, not burnt, but cooked off. And you end up with this beautiful golden butter. So ghee is my absolute favorite. It's an acquired taste. You start with a little bit goes a long way. So that's my favorite. I do love bacon fat and I cook a lot of bacon. I'm like bacon all day, every day bacon. It's like if you are craving during your period or in a in a menopausal like hot flash moment and you want that salty crunchy, I say switch the potato chips for bacon. Bacon.
Ooh.
I get the pre-cooked bacon in the big packets from Costco, and you just heat them up in the microwave. It's ready to go bacon. So go for that if you're craving that, and it's going to be actually helpful for you. It's going to actually help reduce your inflammation rather than you're crampy and you've got a heavy period and you're going to eat food that's going to actually exacerbate the inflammation. No, go for the bacon. You'll get that same satiated feeling but it's actually going to help reduce the inflammation. So I love that. I also I love coconut oil. Coconut oil is very popular in the sort of low carb keto, eat whole foods protocols. It is again, it's a saturated fat. It's not an animal fat. So if you have people who aren't really keen on the butter or the ghee, I mean, I just eat sticks of butter. I'm not going to lie. Or the animal fats. Coconut oil is a really good alternative. It's a really good alternative. And a lot of people like to put it in their coffees and they use it as kind of a meal replacement. And the benefit of that is that, you have that feeling of being satiated. It actually helps you burn more of your own body's fat. The only thing is I say to beginners, proceed with caution. Do a few drops at a time. If you go and take a couple of tablespoons of coconut oil or MCT oil, which is a medium chain triglyceride coconut oil, then you need to take the rest of the day off and make sure you're stocked up on toilet paper. That's all I can say.
Back to that poop again.
Back to the poop. But yeah, I mean, these fats are really, they're actually going to help reduce the inflammation. And they're going to help, especially the butter, and that's going to help cool everything down. So those are my favorite fats that I use all the time. I have jars of bacon grease in my fridge, and you know what? It never goes off.
No.
Never goes off.
No. And the other thing that I've learned through my training with periods is pregnenolone is a hormone or is a chemical made from the cholesterol
Mhm.
from our foods.
Mhm.
Now, okay, so you take the cholesterol, it helps make this pregnenolone. Well, guess what the pregnenolone does? It makes cortisol, testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen,
Mhm.
our reproductive hormones. So if we're eating the bad, or I don't want to say bad, the less than favorable fats, those seed oils
Yeah.
and the
No,
processed,
they're toxic junk. Let's
yeah,
call it what they are. They're
the
toxic junk oils.
the margarines and stuff
I'm
like
not
that.
I'm uncensored,
Uh,
remember, Heather?
you are uncensored. Um, if you take and you eat the margarines, or you
Mhm,
completely cut fat
mhm.
out of your diet, you're actually stopping your hormones from
Yes.
working correctly.
Mhm. Yep.
I I've run across young ladies who are trying to get pregnant.
Oh,
They grew up in that time era where margarine was the big
margarine
thing
and birth
because
control, hormonal
yes,
birth control. That's all go in a pill.
margarine and fat was bad. You can't have
Mhm. Oh,
animal
yeah,
fat,
no. Oh.
and they wondered why they couldn't get pregnant.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And once they brought fat back in, real honest
Yes.
to goodness fat that our
Mhm.
body knows what to do with, their hormones leveled out and they
Yep.
got pregnant.
Just like
Gee,
that. I
just
know.
like
It's like,
that.
have a nice grass-fed, pasture-raised beef, like, have a nice fatty ribeye, put some butter on it, maybe a little bit of garlic, have a nice side of organic broccoli or asparagus, and you're gonna feel like $1,000,000.
Add a pansy to the top of that, and
There
oh
you
my
go.
goodness,
Woohoo!
one of my favorite steaks was in Alaska, and I remember it had that butter. It had like a
Mm,
garlic butter, and it had this beautiful
yum.
pansy sitting on it, and I'm just like,
Beautiful.
"Ah," and it
Yep.
tasted amazing.
Yeah. And you're gonna feel good, you're gonna have more energy, your libido is gonna be more hoo-hoo, and it's not gonna be like a science experiment.
Yep.
It's like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna get pregnant, we're gonna have a baby," and then it becomes so mechanical, and it just becomes like, "Oh, it's more stress." And the more stressed you are, guess what?
The
You're
harder
less
it is to
likely
get
to get
pregnant,
pregnant.
and
So
I come
it's
across that
yeah.
all the time. I have individuals who are trying to get pregnant argue with me that it's not stress. Stress
Oh,
does not cause infertility. It doesn't cause infertility. It
it's
just decreases your reproductive hormones
right.
because the cortisol's too high. Your body's
Mhm,
under
mhm.
stress. Body's saying it is unsafe to bring a baby into
Right.
this world or even make a baby. We're
Mhm.
not even going to let you even try and
Yep.
make a baby. And then when they stop thinking about it, stop taking all the tests, stop doing everything they need
Mhm.
to, and they refocus, guess what happens?
Bingo. Yeah.
I'm pregnant. Why am I feeling like this? Oh, I have a positive pregnancy test. It's just, it all goes back to what we
Yeah.
eat. And
And our
uh,
metabolic health.
yes,
How can you possibly hope to it's not just even a matter of conceiving, if you can conceive, but if you are metabolically bankrupt when you conceive, if you have obesity, if you have high blood sugar, if you fail that glucose test, I think you have a bit of experience
I
in this
do. I
area.
did. I
I
did.
mean, gestational diabetes is no joke. That's really serious. I don't think a lot of women understand how serious that is, that can have all kinds of dire consequences for you and for your baby.
Yep.
It's just really scary. So and it's like, and I did it to myself, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to shit on myself and say I should have done this, I should have done that. When I was pregnant with my son, I was drinking 2 Diet Cokes a day.
With my older son, I
Oh,
Coke slushies. I
oh my
had to
God.
have Coke slushies and quarter pounders with cheese.
Now, thankfully, my son came out okay.
Oh, mine did
He's
too.
a very, very healthy teenage boy now. But you know what? It's like, and with my first pregnancy, I was metabolically very, very unhealthy. It was kind of a bit of a whoopsie. We were planning on having a baby and we really wanted one. I didn't expect to get pregnant right away. I thought, oh no, I'm definitely need to lose 30 pounds to be within a normal, healthy weight range. It was more, I just want to get fit. I want to get healthy. I was eating a bunch of crap. I had just left a job that was enormously stressful, horrendously stressful. My grandmother, my beloved grandmother, was dying. I actually went back to Australia to see her. And anyway, and I wanted to see my mom and anyway, see family back in Australia. And then I came back here and whoopsie, I got pregnant. And it was just like, really, like, what just happened? And I'm like, I was not expecting that. I thought with all the stress, with where I was in my life, I'm like, okay, well, I'll just take 6 months off and hit the gym and try and clean things up. And it's probably going to take at least 6 months or a year because
Mhm.
that's what we've been told is normal.
Yep.
Normal is the setting on the dryer. It may be typical It may be common, but I don't think it's normal. I don't think it's normal for women to take 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years and need intervention in order to get pregnant. And I'm like wondering, it's because we're metabolically dysfunctional and it's because of our nutrition and our lifestyle. And when you get to the root of the problem, then it doesn't surprise me to hear you've had clients who like all of a sudden they're pregnant when they clean all that stuff up.
Mhm. It
But I was very
Yeah.
unhealthy, and it worries me when I see metabolically unhealthy women, particularly as we age. And again, I'm like, it's just becoming the trend now. Women are having babies later and later when there's already a risk because of so many other things. But I see someone who's really obese and metabolically unhealthy, and I'm like, that's potentially dangerous for you and your baby. It's going to result in complications for your baby. You may end up, having your baby early, and they may be in the NICU and they could have learning deficits and all the rest. I'm like, oh God, it's just overwhelming.
it
It's
it
overwhelming.
is. It is. I mean, I'm I'm right there with you. I really am. We speak the same language.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Because you give out information differently than what I do. You
Uh-huh.
have we share a lot of the same things, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that you can teach others,
Right.
and I'm sure they'd love to find you. Where can we find you?
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, and I do offer a lot of programs for particularly, the menopausal, postmenopausal women, but it's also, for those of us who have daughters. I'm kind of going through this with her too, as she's in, sort of late puberty. I'm online. My website is greengoddess.guru. My business is Green Goddess Health Coaching. And eat more green food, people, preferably organic. Eat more green food. Um, and I'm also on Facebook. I am also on Instagram. If you go to my website, I have some special offers. I have my wheel of life, which is like a pie. You have the pieces of the pie which represent all the different pieces of your life, from relationships to career to finances to spirituality and creativity and environment, all these different pieces of your pie. What this is designed to do, this tool will give you an idea, a pretty accurate idea of what areas in your life you have neglected and what areas you're maybe putting a little bit too much time and energy into, and they're not perhaps serving you well. So it's a really good check in, especially if you have a change in life or you're about to make a change. I like to check in at least once a quarter at the beginning of every season is a good time to do it. That's a free download. I also have a free Facebook community, Kick Your Sugar Cravings, and I do offer a really fun 30 minutes with anyone out there who wants to find out how can you kick your sugar cravings. I'm here for you. So that's how
Oh my
you can find
goodness.
me.
Oh, thank you. And I am definitely going to get that Wheel of Life download because I need to figure that out,
Hmm.
especially with my cycling. I can put that right into my cycle
Yes.
syncing protocol
Hmm.
with the seasonal changes. Thank you so much, Coach Ingrid, uncensored, very uncensored. I love it. What are some important words of wisdom that you can impart on us before we say goodbye?
So, a couple of the most important things I learned when I was studying Ayurveda at Ayurveda school is that food is medicine. And we're going back 5,000 years. And this is very similar. It's a sister science to traditional Chinese medicine. Food is medicine. Our bodies are amazing. They have the ability to heal themselves, provided that you support it in the way it needs to be supported. Food can heal you. Food can also kill you. That same food, depending on what format, is it raw? Is it cooked? Is it in its shell? Is it out of its shell? It's like, how is it cooked? There's all, at what time of the day do you eat it? There's all these different things. That same food can also be poison. And it's having that knowledge that food is medicine and that you can heal yourself. You can reverse chronic disease. At the very least, you can mitigate the symptoms. And I know because I should be dead. I should be dead. And it's food that healed me. It's lifestyle and mindset and self-love, all of these things that healed me. And so if I can do it, you can all do it. And it really is. Just know that there are alternatives out there. Yes, pharmaceuticals are important. I'm not bashing, pharmaceuticals. They have a place. They're not for everyone and they may not necessarily be forever. There is an alternative. I like to think it's integrative. that I work with people integratively. If you want to get off your meds, you can. It's up to you. The choice is yours. You are one decision away from a completely different life.
Yes, you are. Wow, what amazing words of wisdom to end this episode on. Thank you so much, Coach Ingrid Uncensored, for taking us on an enlightening journey into metabolic health and how it impacts every single system within our bodies.
Thank you, Heather.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so happy to have you on here. All of the links that Coach Ingrid mentioned can be found in the show notes. Thank you, listeners, for spending your time with us today. If you found a nugget of wisdom or even a moment of an empowerment, my mission is accomplished. If you know someone that could benefit from this information, please share Embracing Flow with them. Until next time, love hard, laugh often, and as always, be vividous. See you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Embracing Flow. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, submit a rating and review, and share it with your friends. Visit my website to receive your free PDF on 4 ways to decrease PMS. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, love hard, laugh often, and as always, be vividous.